Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Pentest Hint, and today we are diving into the essential questions you might face in a penetration testing interview if you are a fresher. So we will cover some common questions, provide sample answers and give you tips on how to improve your skills in the exciting field of penetration testing. So let's get started. So first of all, understanding the basics. So first thing, employer want to know if you have a strong foundation in the basics of penetration testing. So here are some questions you might encounter. So the first basic question is, what is penetration testing? So penetration testing or pen testing is a simulated cyber attack against a computer system to check for vulnerabilities that an attacker could exploit, and it involves some various techniques to identify and mitigate security risk. Then the second questions may be about like, why is penetration testing important? So you can explain penetration testing is crucial because it helps identify and fix security vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by attackers, and it ensure the security and integrity of systems and data. Next question is, can you explain the difference between black box, white box and gray box testing? So you can explain like, sure, black box testing is performed without any prior knowledge of the system, just like act as an outsider's perspective. White box testing is done with full knowledge of the system, including source code and the architecture. And gray box testing is a mix of both, where the tester has some partial knowledge. Then it's all about specific vulnerabilities. So we have some specific vulnerabilities. So first one is cross-site scripting. So employer can ask you like, what is cross-site scripting? So your answer should be like, cross-site scripting is a security vulnerability that allows an attacker to inject malicious script into content from otherwise trusted websites, and these scripts can then be executed in the context of another user's browser, and it leading to a various attacks such as cookies theft, session hijacking or some defacement. Then employer may ask about the different type of accesses. So you can explain like, there are three main types of accesses: stored accesses, reflected accesses and DOM based accesses. Here employer maybe give you some confusion about like, accesses have two types, persistent and non-persistent. Then you can explain like, it's similar to stored accesses and reflected accesses. So that stored accesses occurs when the malicious script is permanently stored on the targeted server, such as in database. And reflected accesses happens when the malicious script is reflected off a web server, such as in error message or search result. And DOM-based accesses is a type of accesses where the vulnerabilities exist in client-side code rather than server-side. Then next question would be like, how can accesses be prevented? Because employer wants to know that, do you know about like mitigation techniques or not? So your answer should be, accesses can be prevented by sanitizing and validating all user inputs, encoding output to prevent script execution, using CSP like content security policy headers to restrict the source from which script can be loaded, and keeping software libraries and frameworks up to date to avoid these non vulnerabilities. Your next question should be related to your union based SQL injection. Like, what is union based SQL injection? So union based SQL injection is a technique where an attacker injects a union SQL operator into a vulnerable SQL query to retrieve data from the database. So by doing this, the attacker can combine the result of the original query with the result from another select statement, and it potentially accessing some sensitive information from the database. Your next question would be like, can you give an example of a union based SQL injection attack? So you can explain like, sure. And just imagine, or you can start with suppose, like suppose you have a vulnerable query like select name email from user where id equal to 1, and attacker might modify it to select name email from user where id 1 union select username password from admin. So this query would return the result of both the original query and the injected one potential exposing admin username and password. Your next question would be like, how can union based SQL injection be prevented? So to prevent union based SQL injection, use prepared statement and parameterized queries which ensure that user input are treated as data rather than executable code, and also validate and sanitize all input, employ the principle of least privileges for database accounts, and regularly update and patch database management system. Then your next question for some specific vulnerability would be related to SSRF. So again, it would be start from like, what is server side request forgery? So you can explain like server side request forgery or SSRF is a vulnerability that allow an attacker to induce the server side application to make HTTP request to an unintended location, and often bypassing some security control and accessing internal systems or services that are not directly exposed to the attacker. Then the employer question would be like, can you provide an example of SSRF attack? So you can explain like, imagine a web application that fetches data from a URL by specific by the user, like example.com/fetch and question mark URL equal to some domain, let's say example.org. And if the application doesn't validate that input properly, an attacker could manipulate the URL parameter, which is like http://example.com fetch question mark URL equal to, and then it would be changed to http://internal system/admin. So causing the server to make a request of an internal administrative interfaces that should not be accessible. Then it would be asked like, how can we mitigate some SSRF vulnerabilities? So you can explain like, for mitigating strategies for SSRF including validating and sanitizing user input, whitelisting allowed URLs or domains, using network segmentations to limit the like server ability to interact with sensitive internal services, and employing metadata services and web application firewall that WAF to detect and block some malicious requests. Then the employer wants to know about or will assess your some technical knowledge. So here are some technical question. So first one is like, what are the common type of vulnerabilities you look in a penetration test? So you can explain like, common vulnerabilities include SQL injection, cross-site scripting, buffer overflow, insecure configurations, and broken authentication. We would check. Then the cross question may occur like, what tools do you use for penetration testing? So you can explain like, some popular tools are Nmap for network scanning, Suite for web application testing, Metasploit for exploiting vulnerabilities, and Wireshark for network traffic analysis. Then next question would be, how do you perform a SQL injection attack? So you can explain, a SQL injection attack involves inserting some malicious SQL queries into input fields to manipulate the database. For example, entering like single quote or single quote 1 single quote equal to single quote 1, which is your authentication bypass script in a login field, could bypass authentication if the input is not properly sanitized. So you can explain the exact authentication bypass script like or1 equal to 1 or a equal to a. The next is the practical scenario. So interviewer that often use practical scenarios to see how you would handle the real world situation. So here are some examples. The first question is like, let's say you found a vulnerability in a client system, how would you report it? So you can explain, I would document the vulnerability in detail, including steps to reproduce it and with that potential impact and recommendation of fixes. So I would then communicate this information clearly and professionally to the client, ensuring they understand the risk and how to mitigate it. Then interviewer may ask about like describe a situation where you had to learn a new tool or technique quickly. So you can explain your real incident, or you can explain like in one instance, I needed to use Bub Suite for a web application test. I took an online course and practiced with tutorials until I was comfortable using it effectively. And this not only helped in the project but also added a value skill to my toolkit. Then your next is that soft skills. So penetration testers also need some strong soft skills, where some questions focus on how do you keep yourself updated with the latest security trends and vulnerabilities. So you can explain, I regularly follow security blogs, participate in online forums, attend webinars, and take part in cybersecurity competitions like Capture the Flags, and this helps me to stay informed about new threats and techniques. Then it would ask that can you describe a time when you had to work in a team to solve a problem? So you can explain, like during a college project our team had to secure a network, and we divided tasks based on each member's strength and communicated effectively and collaborated to identify and mitigate vulnerabilities. And this experience taught me the importance of teamwork in cybersecurity. So these are the questions, but there are some improvement tips which you need to know. So basically we have covered like almost that questions, and here are some tips for to improve as a fresher in penetration testing field. So first one is continuous learning. So stay curious and keep learning. Enroll in online courses, read books on cybersecurity, and follow industry expert on social media. Then practice regularly. So use platform like Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, and CTF challenges to practice your skills in a safe environment. Then certifications. So pursue that certifications such as Certified Ethical Hacker, CEH, OSCP, and CompTIA Security Plus, and they add the credibility to your resume. The next is for networking. So join cybersecurity communities, attend conferences, and network with professionals in the field. And this can open up job opportunity and provide valuable insights. The next is build a portfolio. So you have to document your project and findings, create a blog or a GitHub repository to showcase your work and share your knowledge with others. So thanks for watching. I hope this video helps you prepare for your penetration testing interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more content like this. Good luck and keep learning.